Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E. Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KNBR, or maybe from some of these other Locked On shows that we do. Today, the Niners, a huge win over the Cardinals. They start 3-0 despite a lot of adversity this season. And speaking of adversity, more adversity on the defensive side of the ball with Nick Bosa going down. They overcome it, step up big at the end anyways to secure the win.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Dwayne Boyd, San Francisco 49er, four-time Super Bowl champion. And the thing that I saw today was the 49ers in the red zone. They was 1 for 4 for 25%. You can't leave points in the hands of a kicker in the red zone. You got to score. You got to go for the bounty.
My name is Eric Crocker, host of Locked On 49ers, and man, I'm excited to talk about the 49ers just being able to pull out a victory regardless of the players who are currently out on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to talk about all that and more coming up.
Locked On 49ers Squad Show starts right now.
To all the faithful, it's the 49ers Squad. Everything San Francisco 49ers every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from Levi's Stadium. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. For those faithful to the Bay, the 49ers Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, everyone? And thanks to all of you for tuning in, all our everydayers here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. However, you're getting the show YouTube or on the Locked On 49ers podcast feed. Make sure you're subscribed, turn those notifications on so you never miss a show. Why would you want to miss a show? We got four-time Super Bowl champion Dwayne Boyd sitting here giving you everything you need to know, plus Eric Crocker, sometimes Brian Peacock from the Locked On 49ers podcast. And it's a fun time when your team's winning football games, right? Like 3-0 start to the season for the 49ers. This one was close, though, man. And I told everybody that I could talk to about this whole week leading up to this game. Don't count out the Cardinals, man. Do not sleep on this football team. They're a thorn in the side of the 49ers. They always have been. Shanahan has a losing record against them since he took over as head coach of the 49ers. And this team always plays really tough against the 49ers, especially at Levi's. And today, absolutely no different. Really, in that fourth quarter there, it was looking bleak, man. Like after that Mac Jones interception in the fourth quarter, I thought that the Cardinals were going to go down and at least be able to kick a field goal on that one. Then you get the safety. It started to seem like it was unraveling for the 49ers there. How did they overcome this what seemed to be like this slow death spiral? Eric, let's go to you first, man. What did you see the 49ers do differently down the stretch to kind of pull the e-brake on that slow descent?
Well, I think what they did more than anything was give us the full Jimmy Garoppolo experience, and that was led by Mac Jones. All right, I mean, you had the very untimely interception late in this game, and then you had the safety late in the game. And I know a lot of people at that point were thinking, it's not looking great for the 49ers, but the defense was able to get a very timely stop. Terrific job by young Upton Stout to break up a pass on 3rd and long. And the 49ers pin back. They get Mac Jones. And again, he turns into a late game Jimmy Garoppolo and leaves the 49ers down to field goal range. And Eddie Pinero, he kicks the game-winning field goal, just like we all drew it up. So I think that's what stood out to me more, just the timely manner in which the 49ers executed, which I'm more pleased with because understanding who's out there, right? Defensively, not having a Nick Bosa out there. Offensively, you don't have Brock Purdy. You don't have George Kittle. You don't have Juwan Jennings. You don't have Brandon Ayuk. And you still figure out a way to come out with a victory. That was a really good job down the stretch by the San Francisco 49ers offense and defense.
Yeah, next man up mentality. And Shanahan said it himself post-game. He said, on the overcoming injuries topic, he pointed out that last year, the 49ers aren't winning this type of football game. This would have been a loss for the 49ers last season. And weirdly enough, the 49ers already halfway to their win total from last year. It seems like a weird thing to say in week 3, but that's where we're at with this team. And down the stretch with Nick Bosa being out, I was really impressed with the way that the young guys were able to step up. I thought Mykal Williams had a great game today. I thought that he was really active on that defensive front. And as you said, Upton Stout, who did not have the secondary as a whole, did not have their best game today, I don't think. I mean, it wasn't like a terrible game from anybody in particular, but there were some things that were going on out there. And Upton Stout on that last play looked like he kind of got beat on the route, but he never died. He battled back and was able to fight going to the ground and just jar that ball out. Great job by Upton Stout, because if he does not make that play, like that might have been the most single pivotal play if you had to pick one play in this entire game, because if that's a completion, game's basically over. The Cardinals kick field goal and the 49ers are going to have a really hard time coming back. And I'm assuming the Cardinals would have bled that clock pretty heavily in that situation. It would have been a really tough spot to be in. And all these young guys really stepping up down the stretch. And Dwayne, I want to get what your eyes saw from these young defenders, like the Mykal Williamses, the Upton Stouts, all these young guys that are having to step up for this team right now. That's really hard to do 3 games into your NFL career, being put in these big spots. So Dwayne, what did you see from these young 49ers defensive players?
Well, I saw young guys coming alive. I saw young guys, stepping up at the time in a critical situation. When it's time to make a play, somebody got to show up. And you're right with Stout. I thought he made a heck of a play. That was a game changer. Right there when the game is on the line, it's like, okay, put it on my back. Come at me. I'm going to make the play, and he did it. And you look at too also, when Nick Bosa, with him going out, the young guys stepped up. They could have easily folded, but they didn't. And that's a true sign of a team, coming together and going to another level. When you got the young guys showing up in critical situations, that's coming together right there. And I was impressed with what the defense did down the road, And, the offense kind of, you're right. It looked kind of bleak when they had the safety. It's like, wow, we got to go out there and stop them, and somebody, willed to stop, it was 11 guys that did their jobs, and that was a great turnaround right there, and that's when teams grow up, they grow up in the fourth quarter, Hey, and they grew up today in the fourth quarter today, because it was like, hey, if we can just stop these guys, the offense will give us a chance. And then the offense, you can't count out, your guy Jake. I thought Jake made a couple of great catches there down the stretch, and Rickey did too. That was big too, and it all seemed like, hey, maybe the team is growing up without those stars. It's great to see that.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys that stepped up today, a lot of young guys. Rickey Pearsall, we absolutely have to go into his game a little bit later. I thought that he really helped carry this 49ers offense, set up that lone touchdown with a 34-yard grab, also had a key 4th down conversion. But I want to go back to that interception that Mac Jones threw. Are you, because we're kind of poking fun at him, talking about him being Jimmy Garoppolo adjacent, but I don't know, Eric, you played the position. Or the defensive back? Do you think that that pick was more the defensive back making a play, or do you put that one on Mac Jones? From my perspective, I think that there's a little bit more Rickey Pearsall could have done in that situation to prevent that pick. What did you see out there on that play?
I saw Rickey Pearsall try to undercut the ball. Now, again, I'd have to see it from maybe a different view. It looked like he was coming across. Could he have worked back downhill a little bit? I have a good friend of mine, Greg Pinelli. He's a big-time quarterback trainer out here in California. I played junior college football with him. And we always talk about these kind of things where everybody wants to just put it on the quarterback. But when you watch the film, did the receiver work back downhill, or did he drift upfield, allowing a safety or defensive back to undercut the ball and pick it off? So that's something where, again, ideally it wasn't a great location for the throw, and you put the ball in harm's way. Something I thought he did a great job of last week not doing. This week, obviously, in an untimely manner, he put the ball in the bad spot for the 49ers and ended up getting picked off. But yeah, I would like to kind of see a different angle to see, is there more that Rickey Pearsall could have done? Because it looked like he had an in cut, and he just going and the safety just undercut it and picked it off.
Yeah, and Dwayne, we were kind of talking about this right before we started the show. Did you see anything different than that on that play as well? What did you see from Pearsall on that defender?
Well, I thought I kind of agree with Eric a little bit, but also the quarterback too. You got to put a little bit of that in his hands too, because I thought it was a bad decision on his part, and also he didn't get a chance to really step into the throw, and I thought, he should have done a better job of putting the ball, out of harm's way. I thought.
Yep.
Yeah, and ultimately, like Eric said, it's something we praised McCorkle a lot for not doing last time out. He didn't throw that the Jimmy G hospital ball, the loft, which is way too much air underneath it, just not great location over the middle. We didn't really see him do that too often in week one. We did see it a little bit more today, which is why Mac is the backup quarterback. And for all of the crowd that was maybe, I think it's a definitive minority, but it's a loud minority of guys who think that Brock isn't it. And I have a feeling it's the same people who say that Kyle Shanahan's not a good head coach, which I think is just an absolute pile of hot garbage as far as takes go. But it's a small but vocal minority that like to talk about how maybe Mac Jones should have been the starting quarterback after last week. And today you kind of saw why he's relegated to the backup role. Not always super consistent, but to Mac Jones's credit, when all the chips were down, man, that last drive in the fourth quarter, I was really impressed with the way that he was able to plant that back foot and just make snap decisions. His decision-making was very decisive, very quick, ball just zipping out of his hand. And it looked like he was a little hobbled there with the leg. Very impressed by Kendrick Bourne as well on that last drive. I thought he came up with a couple really, really big grabs. Eric, what did you see for the 49ers offense? How did they turn that corner in that final drive of the fourth quarter after really the rest of that quarter? They looked really bad, honestly.
Yeah, I would say that, Mac Jones was very confident with what he was seeing. And it feels like Kyle Shanahan gave him like some clear and defined reads. And then he just went out there and executed and threw the ball with confidence. It was like, I know what I'm seeing. I know what I'm looking for. I know the receiver in this situation, what he's going to do, maybe because of his experience, past experience playing with Kendrick Bourne. And I thought he did just a terrific job of just executing. So that was really good. But I think more than anything, it was just, I know where I need to go with the ball. And he threw that ball with confidence. How many balls did you see lofted in that situation? And then the timely screen that Kyle Shanahan drew up. I thought that was terrific as well. Inviting pressure, knowing, hey, this is a situation. They're going to try to maybe get the 49ers to be backed up a little bit more, bring pressure. All right, yeah, go ahead, bring pressure. We'll invite that upfield a little bit. Here we go. Dump it right over your head to Christian McCaffrey, and he did the rest. It was a really good combination of Mac just knowing what he was seeing and being confident in that, and then Kyle Shanahan doing a terrific job with the timely screen. That was awesome.
Yeah, I thought that that screenplay was huge. Obviously, they were kind of like they were in field goal range before, but that really it made it a much more confident situation for Eddie Pinero going in for that game winner right at the end there. And man, just we don't have to get into it, but too deep. But Dwayne, how much of how much less worried are you about these late game situations with Eddie back there than with Jake Moody? Seems like a layup question, but we got to talk about it, man.
Well, I know it, man. You got to talk about Eddie MFF money, man. He came through at the time when it was right. So it gives the players confidence too, So it'll go on to the next game now because they know that, hey, we got a kicker that comes through for us in the clutch. But, I'm one of those guys, you still can't put it in the kicker's hand, You got to play defense and got to play offense. It doesn't come down to the kicker, In a situation like that, put the ball in the end zone. Yeah. But that's the key to the game. Put it in the end zone. You don't have to worry about the kicker.
And they had some problems in the red zone. We talked about that in the open. And I mean, Christian McCaffrey getting stuffed at the half yard line in this game earlier on. What do you think is really the issue, primary issue with the 49ers in that red zone area? And how do they fix this? How do they actually be able to get 6 instead of just 3 coming out of those drives, because you're right. You can't just keep leaving points on the table and expect to win football games.
No, that's the thing. When you down the red zone, you gotta make it score count, And if it's from the 1 yard line, you know who that's on. That's on the guys up front. You gotta say, hey, we're putting it in. We're knocking these guys back. And you didn't see that. I thought the Arizona defensive front got too much push on them in the run game, and it caused a bit of a problem because we haven't seen them rush for over 100 yards this season, have we?
We have not.
And to down the road, man, you got to get your rushing game going, because right now, they have 73 yards total rushing. That's not going to cut it. You got to get up there with 150, 160, a game, and that'll take a lot of pressure off your quarterback too. So right now they putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. That don't cut it. He had to throw for 282 yards today. Instead, that running game got to take some of that pressure off.
Yeah, and
I definitely think that it pertains to the red zone that would really help the 49ers. I think the 49ers in the run game too. I mean, they're missing George Kittle, and I think he's huge in the run game. So not having him out there, you talk about the red zone as well, trying to be more efficient in that area. I think George Kittle, not having him, that's an issue. And they've been having some of these struggles going back to last season. I think they struggled in the red zone then as well. And we attributed to, there's no Christian McCaffrey. Well, it seems like the 49ers consistently have a guy out that they need to just be the best version of themselves in the red zone. So now you got to figure out a way to punch these in while having what you have, because it's just what the situation is. All right, George Kittle, he's on IR, and hopefully he's back after 4 games. But right now, we don't know exactly when he's going to be back, and sometimes these soft tissue injuries are lingering. So you got to figure it out, Kyle. How can we be better? Maybe just more exotic looks, different motions, a little bit more trickery stuff, maybe some pick routes down there. Whatever you have to do is it's not working just to run the ball straight ahead with Christian McCaffrey or try to throw a flat route to Christian McCaffrey. Somebody else has to threaten the defense down there, pull their eyes, so then now you go the opposite way. You got to figure out something, though.
Yeah, and for as creative of a play caller as Kyle Shanahan is, I feel like he doesn't give us those exotic looks in the red zone. And you look around the NFL and you see it all the time. Like you'll have a guy in the slot, you'll have 2 receivers to the left with 1 out wide, 1 in the slot. And a lot of times in those red zone situations, obviously the defense is crowded up near the line of scrimmage. So you'll have some cross formation motions where you'll be able to easily identify who is covering, who is dropping down into the box. And I feel like you just don't see that much motion, that many exotic looks from the 49ers with being able to kind of help the quarterback make these quick, easy, decisive reads. And it's, you got a little something today with the Juszczyk touchdown, but I want more of these Kyle Shanahan, brainchild plays in the red zone, because I think that's where he could really put his creativity on display. And that seems like the perfect time to shine for a guy who likes to be like a mad scientist with his play sheet and get in the lab and design up, something that's going to be a guaranteed, 2-3 yards. I feel like Shanahan could make that in his sleep, but we just don't see it that often on game day. Obviously, I'm making it sound a lot easier than it actually is to implement these types of things. But I feel like if he's held up as one of the best play callers and play designers in all of football, we should be able to get some of that from him, right? That's the advantage of having a guy like that at that spot. And I do think that I saw in the chat, Richard, he was hitting on something that I think is kind of a key here too. Brian Robinson, I think should get a little more work in that red zone area. He's a big body dude who can just, if you're on the 1 yard line, give it to Brian Robinson, fall forward for a yard. That's a touchdown, And so get Christian McCaffrey a little bit more rest. B-Rob only got 2 carries today. Christian McCaffrey, 17 carries and 10 receptions. He had 15 targets in this one. Again, that's a hell of a lot of usage for a guy who obviously he's the safety blanket for Kyle Shanahan, and you need McCaffrey to keep it going in order for this offense to stay on schedule. But give him breaks where you can. And I think that 1 yard away from the Reds or from the end zone with a big back like Brian Robinson sitting on the sideline waiting around, that's the perfect opportunity to be able to take some miles off of Christian McCaffrey, let Brian Robinson go be that battering ram and punch that ball in. And that's what I'd like to see. I know that obviously it's so hard to take Christian McCaffrey out in any situation because He gives you all these different dynamic aspects that I don't think any other running back in the game gives you the complete package like Christian McCaffrey does. Like, who else is carrying the rock 17 times and then going out and getting 10 receptions for 88 yards? There's absolutely nobody else in the NFL that's going to do that right now besides Christian McCaffrey. But ultimately, it's you know what the limitations of this 49ers offense is right now. And right now, you just don't have a lot of bodies out there that are going to be making a whole lot of plays. So McCaffrey's usage, obviously, during this time is going to be heavy. You just got to find ways to spell him, I think, if you want to keep him fresh for the rest of the season. I also thought that that what we saw from Rickey Pearsall was awesome today. And just in general, this offense was, even though they were having a hard time getting going, I think that I'm a little encouraged in a way by what I'm seeing because of the amount of injuries on this team. So let's take a quick break here. On the other side, we'll get into Rickey Pearsall's day, a little bit more about what the offense did. We'll talk about all that next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where being right means we're making the right call actually pays off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. And with football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. And in this one, I mean, you can't get in on that max discount for Patrick Mahomes anymore as that game has started now. But ultimately, if you're going to be trying to get in on this Chiefs game action tonight, I think that might be your best bet with Prize Picks today, because it's just going to be a lot more scoring in this game than I think there will be on the Monday night game. So I'm going to be looking to get in on the live lines today on this Chiefs matchup. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by 4-time Super Bowl champion Dwayne Board and host of the Locked On 49ers podcast, Eric Crocker. And today, the 49ers, they come up with a clutch 16-15 win over the Arizona Cardinals. And even though it was not the best offensive outing that we've seen by the 49ers, and even though there were some issues with Mac Jones with that interception, and the yards per pass average was nothing spectacular at 6.9, Christian McCaffrey bottled up to just, again, 3.1 yards per carry, only 52 yards on 17 attempts. But ultimately, despite all these very mediocre numbers, I'm actually pretty encouraged by this 49ers offense right now. Rickey Pearsall, 8 receptions, 117 yards, some key conversions here in this one, including a big 4th down reception that he had. And Mac Jones doing enough to just keep the team afloat, keep them above water, and keep them in games close enough to have a chance to win at the end. And so far, it's been working out for this team, going and getting Kendrick Bourne to kind of fill a hole. But when you look at the laundry list of guys that this team is missing, they're injured on the offensive line. You're missing multiple receivers. Just so many injuries on this team. It's a miracle that they're able to even get in the end zone at all, in my mind. And so I'm kind of curious. First, let's start with Rickey. What made Rickey so successful in this game, despite the fact that it's him and Christian McCaffrey. Those are the 2 players defenses are keying in on, and he's still going for 8 receptions, 117 yards. Eric, what was Rickey doing out there to get so open today?
Man, I think Rickey Pearsall, he fits what Kyle Shanahan wants from his receiver. And I think that's the thing that Kyle was drawn to when he was drafting him, right? Like, he's just not the fastest, or he's not the twitchiest of guys, but he understands how to create certain separations within the route concepts that Kyle Shanahan has drawn up for him. I saw some craftiness at the top of routes, right? In the red zone, giving the guy kind of a rocker step at the top of the route, creating just enough for Mac Jones to be able to throw that ball in there. And then he flashed some really strong hands consistently, whether it was on deep balls or short throws. I think more than anything, his ability to win at every level. We see him in the short game, we see him in the intermediate game, and then to win vertically down the field, it just gives the defender a lot to have to think about. You can't just sit on routes, because he will go up top on you, and he's shown the ability to make some of those tightly contested throws. So he was terrific throughout the day. But I think as far as getting open, he has a certain craftiness at the top of routes to give him just enough separation. And then he has the really strong hands. And I think the strong hands come from a guy who's not thinking as much. You go back to really just in the history of the game, a lot of the rookies that are out there on the field, like thinking a lot, you see some drops. The more they become veterans, those guys' hands start to get better and better. I think we saw that with Jerry Rice back in the day, right? Rookie year, dropped a bunch of passes. From there on, he's had some of the greatest hands in the history of the football game. And I ain't saying that Rickey Pearsall's Jerry Rice with the hands, but we have seen a guy that just looks very confident and comfortable with whatever his job is, and he's executing it, finishing with strong hands.
Yeah, I mean, what are your as far as the hands go? I think Pearsall has shown in his time here that he's got just, it's like a natural ability, right? It's something that you either have or you don't, and obviously you can get better at it as your career progresses in football. But he's a guy that you just watch and just the way that he receives the ball, it just looks so natural, so smooth. He's not like, it doesn't look like he's working on super technical things when he's doing it. It's just natural. It's just coming to him. It's not having to think too hard about it. Dwayne, what are you also seeing Rickey Pearsall being the second coming of Jerry Rice in his hands, just like Eric Crocker just proclaimed him to be?
Hey, Eric wasn't even born when Jerry Rice did that. I saw it live. Jerry had a problem too. He dropped a lot of balls with his early age, but then after that, he became a clutch receiver. And Rickey, you can put Rickey in. He reminds me a lot of Dwight Clark. He's slippery. He finds a way to get open. He's got great hands. And then you go back, another guy too, Eric, I'm going to throw this one on you too. How about Ed McCaffrey?
There we go.
Hey, a little bit like Ed, but he has more speed than Eric did, He just knows how to get open. And to me, his best thing is his deep balls. He does a great job of tracking the ball when it's in the air. If you go back and you look at the balls that, him coming across the middle or, him sitting down in the zone, those are the catches that he needs to concentrate more on, But the deep ball, he's got that down, I think he does a great job adjusting to the ball when it's in the air. I might be wrong, but hey, I'm a defensive guy. I'm a defensive lineman. What do I know about receivers?
Well, you played with some really good ones, and Rickey Pearsall, we're hoping that he's good as well. This is a guy that on the first drive, he beat a guy vertically on a corner route, gave him a nice little rocker step at the top, and created the separation. Mac Jones overthrew him, had a little bit of pressure in his face, and sealed the throw. But he did it. He did a terrific job of just showing that he can win vertically down the field.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He can. And on the throw down the field. He put a little bit too much air on it. I think if he would have taken a little bit of air off of it, he would have caught it and probably would have scored,
Yeah, it was. I think that he did a very good job today. I think he's done a very good job all season long. And one thing that I am curious to see is as this season progresses and you start to get some of those bodies back, you get a George Kittle back, you get a Juwan Jennings back, you get a Brandon Ayuk back. Like if this 49ers offense gets to full strength at some point in time this season, I'm curious to see how Pearsall kind of fits into the hierarchy. Like, is this guy going to overtake Brandon Ayuk as kind of wide receiver one for this team? I think that's possible. Dwayne, do you think that that's going to be the case by the time that Ayuk gets back, given the way that Pearsall's kind of started this season? Do you foresee him kind of taking over that wide receiver one role from Brandon Ayuk right now?
Well, I think he will. I got to ask Eric this, but you think he's better outside, or will he be more effective inside as a slot receiver? I think he's one of those guys that can move in there and make things happen, and also as an outside guy. I just see.
I like him as Z. I like him as Z as a guy that can move and motion, across the formation, but gets a little bit more, off coverage. Because he's off the ball. I think he'll be more ideal in that scenario as opposed to what they did with Brandon Ayuk, who they're like, hey, you are an X receiver, you are on the ball, and we're not going to really help you get open much. We're just going to, you're just going to have to win with your route running every single snap. So I wouldn't ask Pearsall to be that, but he definitely has the ability. He has some quick twitch. He has some vertical speed. And again, we continue to talk about the craftiness to create separation at the top of route. So he's doing all the right things, but I'm not quite sure he's pre-torn ACL version of Brandon Ayuk with being able to do all of those things.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a very fair assessment. I mean, it's easy to look at what you received from Brandon Ayuk, in last season and just kind of, not feel super confident about the guy going into this year. But I would encourage people to look back at what he looked like when, he entered seasons where he had a full off season of an actual training camp and wasn't holding out for a new contract, and how explosive he looked in those situations. Obviously, coming back from an ACL is tough, but there's a lot of guys in the league nowadays who can do it. It's not quite necessarily the same like devastating career altering type injury that it used to be, at least to that same magnitude, based on medical advancements and all that. But I think that it's going to be an interesting thing to kind of watch is how Pearsall folds into this offense when you have all of these other targets come back. And I think with the way that he's been playing, he's going to continue to be a major part of this offense. I don't think there's any way that he kind of like fades into the background. I think it's going to be he's going to be competing for targets with Kittle and with Ayuk and taking away some from Juwan Jennings and all these other guys as well. And that's kind of why I said at the beginning of this segment that I'm a little bit encouraged by what I'm seeing from this 49ers offense, even though surface level, 16 points, not a lot to be encouraged about. 3.1 yards per carry average, not a lot to be encouraged about. 6.9 yards per pass, again, not a lot to be encouraged about. But when you consider all these outside factors, all the injuries that the 49ers have, they've been banged up on the offensive line. They've been banged up at skill positions. Christian McCaffrey does not look healthy, does not look explosive to me at nearly as much as he did in maybe not last season, but the year before when he was actually healthy pre-calf/Achilles injuries, whatever you want to call it. He just doesn't look like the same guy. So for the 49ers to be able to produce a functioning offensive unit, despite all of these issues, this is something this team could not do last year. There were multiple times last year where you would have an injury mid-game to a key offensive player, and it was just, well, hopefully they can win next week, and you just wave the white flag immediately, and that is not what this team is doing. It's a completely different mentality, completely different vibe from the San Francisco 49ers offense right now than it was trying to weather the storm with some of these injuries last year. And so I'm actually pretty confident that this offense is going to be just fine once Brock. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned Brock Purdy, also obviously the orchestrator of the offense, just not out there either the last couple games. And this offense is still able to put enough points on the board to win. You're still seeing good games from key guys like Christian McCaffrey and Rickey Pearsall. And I think that ultimately, once you get whole, that this offense is going to go back to looking scary, just like it was supposed to when with Kyle Shanahan kind of leading the charge. And this was kind of, I think, what they envisioned when they decided to give Brock Purdy those $50 million, that he was going to be able to have this full complement of all these weapons and really be able to utilize the versatility of the 49ers offense. I think that we're still seeing some aspects of that, even though you don't have some of your most versatile guys. Like George Kittle is going to give this team a massive lift in their run game, especially. I think that's where you're going to notice it the most, but also over the middle. Like, he gives you that aspect of toughness in the pass game over the middle, and that's something that they don't really have a whole lot of right now without George Kittle or Juwan Jennings on the roster. And I mean, you're still seeing guys make some tough catches in that space. Tonjes had a big one there on that last drive. And KB as well. We can't forget about KB rolling the clock back today to third and KB before it became third and Juwan. We saw a little bit of that of those consistent hands from Bourne on that final drive, especially. But I'm encouraged overall by this offense. Eric, are you feeling the same way?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to see from the 49ers last season. I'm glad that you touched on it, right? A lot of people were, they only won 6 games. Look at all these guys are out. It's like, man, you still got to figure it out. So this year, and I'm not saying the 49ers are just playing great football on both sides, but I think they are playing good complementary football. All right, you got the Seattle Seahawks. Okay, Seattle, you scored 13. All right, we're going to score 17. Okay, next week, you go on the road. You play the New Orleans Saints, a team that had a bunch of sacks the week before. Okay, you scored 21. We're going to score 26. And in this game, all right, Cardinals, you score 15, 2 of which we gave you from safety. But all right, we're going to score 16, just enough. And I thought there were some opportunities for those kind of wins last season and the 49ers were not pulling out the victories. And then you point to, well, oh, you're missing this guy and this guy and this guy. Today, the 49ers finished the game without Nick Bosa, without George Kittle, without Brandon Ayuk, without Juwan. You're missing all these guys, and you still figure out a win to come away with the victory. Yes, complimentary football, you needed some defensive guys to make plays, and I'm excited to talk about some of the young 49er players who are contributing to this victory. But overall, you just have to figure out a way, and so far this season, they've done just that.
And I think that they're going to continue to find ways to win football games. You got Jacksonville coming up next, and as I said, I don't a couple shows ago, I don't think the 49ers play a team that made the playoffs last season until week 5, until they go and face the Rams. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to continue this hot start, continue their undefeated start to the 2025 NFL season. I guess you can throw out that word, even though we're only 3 games into the season, but it's definitely starting the season on the right foot. I think it kind of helps you wash off some of those bad feelings from last year where it kind of felt like, 49ers coming into this season, a lot of fans holding their breath, kind of waiting to see if it was just going to be a repeat of what we saw last year with the mounting injuries. And especially at the beginning of the year, the way that the season started to begin with all the injuries, it did not fill a lot of people with confidence that this 49ers team was going to be able to finish better than they did last year. And already, I think you're seeing signs of that. 3-0 to start the season. You're halfway to your win total from last year, despite all these injuries. And so the 49ers doing everything that they needed to do to get by and get this win today. And Eric brought it up. We got to talk about some of these young 49ers, especially on the defensive side of the ball, who really stepped up today and made a difference despite no Nick Bosa. We'll get into that next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Today's show is sponsored by Mazda. Mazda is moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game. It's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep the game moving forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward, I got to go with that Rickey Pearsall 34-yard reception that set up the one touchdown the 49ers had today. A Kyle Juszczyk 1-yard reception to put the 49ers on top in this one at the time. And ultimately, it was a big play in this one that really kind of defined what this 49ers offense was doing. And Rickey Pearsall, a huge part of this game today, finishes with 8 receptions for 117 yards, definitely moving this one forward. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by my guys, Dwayne Board, 4-time Super Bowl champion, and host of the Locked On 49ers podcast, Eric Crocker. And in this one, 49ers come up with a 1-point win, and the defense made a lot of plays down the stretch. In this one, we already talked about Upton Stout and his big PBU, but it wasn't just him. I thought that there was a whole lot of, especially young defensive players in this one that really stepped up. Mikael Williams really flashed to me in this one. Dwayne, I want to talk about Mikael Williams, man. What did you see from him, and not just him, but other young 49ers in this one, but especially given your expertise with defensive linemen and in Mikael Williams being kind of that inside outside guy. And he looked, I thought, really good with Bosa. I thought he even stepped up bigger after Bosa went down. What did you see from Mikael Williams today?
Well, each game he gets better and better, from the first game, against the Seahawks to the game against the Saints. Every game he gets better and better, and that's a great sign. And, he played at a big institution. Okay. So big games, he knows how to come alive in big games. Big players show up in big games because, back in the day when Ryan Lott came to the 49ers, he was used to that, and it rubbed off on the rest of the players, and you watch, we talked about it, who wins games when it's close? Defense, Last year, the defense didn't show up in those 3-point games, 2-point games, This was a chance that the defense showed up, You know, the last 3 weeks, the defense been showing up down the stretch. So that's telling me and everyone else in Niner land that, hey, the defense has put the team on their shoulders. And right now, who's carrying the team? I think the defense is carrying the team. You know, they carrying the team to wins. Okay, so as long as they keep it going like this and the offense come alive, it's going to be real interesting down the stretch.
I was not anticipating the 49ers defense to play this well this early in the season. I mean, just timely turnovers, and obviously Nick Bosa, forcing the fumble on Sam Darnold in the first game of the season. Second game of the season, who was it? Bryce Huff, who ended up getting a sack to kind of seal the deal there for the 49ers. And then you kind of look at this game and you see Upton Stout, young kid. I'll tell you who I was extremely impressed with, and that's D. Winters. This is a guy who, the 49ers drafted Nick Martin. I think they drafted Nick Martin because they weren't quite sure with D. Winters. Matter of fact, they tried to fly to Denver to fly to Texas to convince Dre Greenlaw to come back to the 49ers. He said, no, I'm not. So they drafted a guy. And that told me, like, you drafted him third round. We're not quite sure about D. Winters. And he stepped up every step of the way. He has given the coaching staff a lot of confidence just by how he was performing during training camp. And then you watch him right now and how he's flying around sideline to sideline. The tackles that he's making, he's doing an awesome job for the 49ers and replacing Dre Greenlaw. And I think that is a huge storyline for the 49ers and definitely will continue to be as the season goes on.
Yeah, he has been absolutely awesome this year. I think he is. If you had to give out a most improved award to a 49er through the first 3 weeks of the season, it's D. Winters, hands down. I mean, this guy looks night and day different from what he did last year. Like, you saw the physical tools last year, you saw the straight line speed and the acceleration and the tackling ability at times, but I think he's tackling a lot better this year too. Like, guys aren't getting away from him. The 49ers as a whole, I think, are doing a lot better job of gang tackling this year than they did last year, and when they were leaving guys on islands a lot and just kind of getting beat with arm tackles. But D. Winters, 8 tackles. He had 1 pass defended in this one. He also had a quarterback hit. So he just did everything all over the field, man, stopping, making plays in the run game, pass play, or pass game, and also putting pressure on the quarterback. This guy, his sideline to sideline speed is super impressive to me, because when you have 2 guys like that, like when I think of 49ers defense in my lifetime, I think of guys like, I think of linebacker pairings. I think of Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman wreaking havoc sideline to sideline. I think of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw just terrorizing offenses sideline to sideline. And last year, seeing Fred it felt like it was Fred Warner versus the world, right? On a broken ankle, Fred's trying to cover the entire 50 yards sideline to sideline. And when he's only got to cover, 25 of those yards, like one half of the field, and he can trust his counterpart in D. Winters to go cover that other half, and with a considerable degree of like violence as well. Like, I love the way that D. Winters is just trying to lay that stick on people. It's not quite the same level of violence that Dre Greenlaw would bring to games, which was, I think, just a whole nother level with the attitude that Drake carries and all that. But D. Winters, man, he might not be that same kind of, physically terrifying, imposing guy. But hey, if you're watching the tape out there, you're going to be just as scared of this guy and this 49ers linebacker pair as you have been about any of these other ones that I just mentioned, because D. Winters is really stepping up in such a big way. And I'm not saying that he's at the same level as a Dre Greenlaw or a Navarro Bowman yet, but honestly, I could kind of see him turning into that guy. Dwayne, are you getting the same vibes from D. Winters as I am right now, that I think that this guy could really be that next super solid number 2 next to Fred Warner?
I see the same thing. You watch D. Winters, man. When it's time to close on the tackle, he closes. It's no doubt about it. And when he gets there too, he puts them on the ground. And I like the way he plays. He reminds me of a couple of throwback guys, but I'm not going. I quit naming guys. He reminds me a lot of Lee Woodall, but you guys don't remember Lee Woodall.
Number 54.
Huh? Number 54.
Number 54, middle linebacker.
Yeah, they were about the same size, and the same speed. And he reminds me a lot of Woodall, and he just knows the situation. He knows how to play. And you watch him, he flashes at the time when it's time to make a play. And I like that about the guy.
Yeah, I think that he has been just a massive improvement for this defense, and it's not just him, right? Like it's the Robert Saleh effect. A rising tide lifts all boats, and that is what has happened across the board with this defense. I mean, Robert Saleh is that singular force that has risen the tide across this entire 49ers defense, and you see everybody from the secondary to the front seven just playing such great football right now that we really did not see since he's been gone. It's a completely different vibe defensively than you had with Steve Wilks or Nick Sorensen coaching that defense back there. It just feels right. You know what I mean? It feels like everything in the universe is back to the way it's supposed to be. Robert Saleh is back where he's supposed to be. The 49ers defense is doing things it's supposed to do. This is just what is supposed to happen. At least that's the way that I kind of view it and feel about it. But ultimately, very, very, very impressed with this 49ers defense. I did think that there were some, especially in the first half, I was getting a little frustrated with Kyler Murray scampering around out there. I mean, it didn't end up being a hugely devastating part of the Cardinals offense. He was kind of very much in line with what he did in the Cardinals' previous two games. He had 6 carries for 37 yards and didn't really have that one massive backbreaker, but he was still able to find some wiggle room. Dwayne, we were talking about this a little bit before we started the show. You were noticing some things that Nick Bosa was doing specifically on defense, trying to stop and slow down Kyler Murray that wasn't really working. What were you seeing there?
You know, I saw a couple of stunts they ran. You know, Bosa was supposed to have been outside on contain, but he kind of got too heavy on the tackle. And as soon as Murray saw that, guess what he did? He pulled the ball down, tucked it, and took off running. The thing you got to do with a quarterback like that is you got to work outside. You got to make him run where he doesn't want to run. He doesn't want to run up the middle, okay? So that's telling me that, hey, the outside rushes, they got to do their job. They got to do what they're supposed to be doing. It's containing the quarterback, okay? Don't go in there and trying to be a hero, you know, and forcing, well, I can force inside, you know, now, and I can sack him, you know. He's not going to come up in the middle. Okay, he wants to come outside, and running quarterbacks like Murray, that's where they make their bread and butter at. Okay, you put him where he has to stay in the pocket, because the first game of the season he was sacked 6 times because guess what? They forced him to stay in the pocket. Okay, and he's only 6 foot tall. He can't see over no one. You know, he's 6 foot tall with 31-inch arms. You know, what is he going to do? He can't do nothing. You know, so he's got to get outside to make things happen, and that's what you want to do. And you know, and Bosa, he should know that. You know, he's been in the league long enough. He's watched this guy. How many times did they play him? Twice a year. You know, you got to know that. Hey, he's going to come out. Okay, and you know, I was at the game, and it was like, oh no, not again. You know, why is he getting so thick on the tackle? All the tackle's going to do is just hold you to give him a second. You know, or it needs a split second for Bosa to take off and pick up 10 yards. I mean, for Murray to take off and pick up 10 yards. You know, you can't do that. You know.
Yeah, and this is a thing that I think the 49ers have kind of struggled with. I mean, we've all heard the narrative of the 49ers defense is struggling against mobile quarterbacks, and we've seen Kyler Murray just do this over time and time again, where he pulls that ball back down and beats Nick Bosa specifically to the edge. I feel like Bosa is a lot of times overzealous in his pursuit of quarterbacks in general, but it works out most of the time. It's a lot harder when you're playing a Kyler Murray who can just, you know, the escapability of Houdini out there in the pocket and all that speed and agility. It's tough to get the guy down, but ultimately I think that they did a decent enough job kind of limiting Murray, not just in the run game, but obviously in the pass game as well. The 49ers held the Cardinals to just 159 yards passing, only a 4.5 yard per pass average, and none of their big horses out there really did anything. Marvin Harrison Jr., only 3 receptions for 44 yards. Trey McBride, only 5 receptions for 43 yards. Very pedestrian pass attack. And from a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., who I really expected big things for. I mean, hand up, I have him in multiple fantasy leagues. Real bad choice this year for me. But Marvin Harrison Jr., 3 receptions, 44 yards. Eric, is this guy the real deal? I mean, we thought that this guy was going to be, you know, the one of the like superstar, unmiss or like a lock, right, at that wide receiver spot in his draft. Everyone thought that he was going to just be like the next version of his dad, essentially, out there on the field, and he doesn't really look like that to me. What are you seeing from Marvin Harrison Jr., and why hasn't he really clicked with the Cardinals so far?
Well, anytime a guy refuses to do any testing, it always kind of, raises my antennas a little bit. Like, why aren't you testing? And obviously, he did a terrific job playing football at Ohio State, and he didn't have the best of quarterbacks. And I think he was clearly the focal point of a lot of teams, and he still was finding ways to be extremely productive. But right now, I think because of the style of receiver that he is, he's having to find ways and figure out how he's going to win at the NFL level. You referenced his dad. He's a different type of receiver than his dad. I mean, his dad was 5'11", very slimmer guy, right? So, he was, quicker, twitchy, terrific route runner. Well, Marvin Harrison Jr., 6'4", 215 pounds. He's a bigger body guy, and they have to win in different ways. And I think for him, he just has to figure out what that way is going to be at the NFL level and then be on the same page with his quarterback with that. But we're seeing another guy from his class, another couple guys. All right. One guy, Malik Neighbors, who's playing on Sunday Night Football right now. He's been terrific, and he was a dynamic receiver at LSU. And you see that ability translate to the NFL, and he was not shying away from testing, running 40-yard dashes and doing all those things, seeing how that translates to the NFL. And then there's another guy by the name of Rickey Pearsall, who right now is currently out playing the number 4 overall pick as well.
Yeah, and that's I think any 49ers fan would be happy with that outcome. If you going into that draft, I mean, it would have been, I think everybody would have been stoked to end up with Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors, if coming out of that draft, if you were a 49ers fan. And Rickey Pearsall was I was still happy with the draft pick at the time, but I did have some lingering feelings of the 49ers, even though they haven't missed too much on receiver in recent, like high draft pick receivers such as like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. They hit on those guys. Every time the 49ers draft a first round wide receiver, I always just say a little prayer to myself that it's not going to be AJ Jenkins round 2. And I kind of had that feeling with Pearsall that he kind of might be that guy because of various things we saw at Florida. I didn't know if they would translate to the NFL, but he has fit in so well. And I think that he has definitively had more of an impact on the 49ers offense this year than Marvin Harrison Jr. has had on the Arizona Cardinals offense this year. And I think that if you're looking at this, at the way that this shook out as a 49ers fan, you can't be any more, you can't be feeling any better about Rickey Pearsall than you are right now, man. Like, he just went, they're not playing on the field at the same time, but this guy just went out and showed up his a guy who was picked he was picked 2 receivers before him. He was a top 10 overall pick and playing the same position. And Rickey Pearsall coming out there showing, hey, maybe I should have been that top 10 pick. Maybe I should have been that first receiver off the board or the second receiver off the board in that draft instead of Marvin Harrison Jr. Rickey Pearsall, again, 8 receptions, 117 yards, 14.6 yard per catch average. And Marvin Harrison Jr., just 3 receptions, 44 yards with relatively the same 14.7 yards per reception, but just didn't have it today. I mean, the Cardinals ultimately, after James Conner went down, this one was tough for them to get anything going offensively. You obviously hope that Conner's going to be okay, but I'm not saying that the 49ers fans are going to lack sympathy for the Cardinals in this situation, but I mean, they got some injuries too they're dealing with, right? Like the 49ers dealing with some injuries, Cardinals can deal with some too, and they can see how that feels for once. But the Niners ultimately able to hang on to this one, 16-15 win at Levi's in the home opener. And now you got a 3-0 start. You're going into playing Jacksonville next week, and you're riding pretty solid right now. Can the 49ers keep this going? We'll break that down next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love FanDuel for a variety of reasons, but my favorite one is right now, if you're sitting at home on your couch or at your computer watching the show, you can pull up the FanDuel app right now and get in on some action on this Sunday night football game that's happening right now. You can get in on live bets, player parlays, spreads, whatever you want to do. You can find it on FanDuel, man. So if you're ready to get in on the action, you can download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and I'm joined by four-time Super Bowl champion Dwayne Board and host of the Locked On 49ers podcast, Eric Crocker. Today, the 49ers get it done, beat the Cardinals. You're 2-0 in division play, 3-0 overall to start the season. Pretty solid start, man. Like I think that you couldn't, I mean, obviously you don't have any losses. You couldn't ask for a better start. Maybe you could hope to be a little more healthy, but ultimately the 49ers overcoming adversity and winning games thanks to this defense. Now, Dwayne, we saw the Jaguars kind of maybe start to play some good football at the end of this game that they played earlier today. Are they going to pose like a serious threat to this 49ers team next week, or are you expecting another 49ers win moving to 4-0?
You know, one thing about back in the day when I used to play the game and played with, with some great football players, it was one thing that we always did and we always took into account. Don't play down to the level of your opponent, okay? Because right now, Jacksonville's playing some ugly football, the quarterback is playing some ugly football. I think his quarterback rating was 56.5 this past game and they won, so you don't want to get caught in that trap, man. Don't play down to the other team's level, okay? So now you got to do what? You got to look past that, you got to take your game even higher, This is the scariest game you want to play with Jacksonville coming in. It's an alligator land on the golf course waiting for you to sneak up on you, So you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, and playing down to their competition is something the 49ers did a lot last season. And Crocky, it seems like the 49ers have put some of that to bed this year so far through these first three games. But is this something that still lingers in the back of your head? Are you still a little worried about the 49ers maybe playing down to their competition this year?
Well, I think I don't think we can even look at it like that right now for the 49ers because this isn't even the full version of the Niners. So I think the Niners right now are in survival mode and they're doing a good job of keeping up with teams and then figuring out ways to, pull out victories. Now, if you told me that, hey, we'll see the best version of Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and then Christian McCaffrey all of a sudden looks like a young, spry version of himself and Juwan Jennings is out there and Nick Bosa's back healthy and, now you have all your guns, then I see an opportunity for them to potentially kind of play down, and then you hope that they don't do that. But right now, I don't think the 49ers can look at any opponent as being lesser than them because this isn't the full version of the 49ers. So they got to go out there. They got to play some good football. And, for the 49ers, it's just, go get Trevor Lawrence. And he's a guy that does not look good out there. And I'm watching him, and I not feel bad for the owner, but, for anybody who made the decision to pay him the money that they did, I think that was based off of what he was in college and what you were expecting him to be at the NFL level, but he hasn't shown a glimpse of that so far and definitely hasn't this season.
Yeah, and he and specifically him and Brian Thomas Jr. look like they have not gotten on the same page at all this year. I tuned into a little bit of that Jaguars-Texans game today, and within the first 30 seconds that I turned that game on, I saw Brian Thomas Jr. run a go, and I saw Trevor Lawrence throw a hook, and it just looked real bad. So we'll see if some of those miscommunications continue next week. But Dwayne, question for you: if like kind of like what Eric's saying, like this 49ers team is in survival mode, trying to fend off all these injuries and just stay afloat. Do you have time I guess the question I'm trying to get at here is does that help this 49ers team in this situation? Does that kind of prevent them from falling into that trap of maybe underestimating some opponents because you're just worried about just staying alive every week and just continuing to push forward and have a functioning unit out there on offense and defense with all these backups in there? Does that kind of help you stay focused and not worry too much about what those other guys over there are doing?
Well, it does. It helped me quite a bit because, you go back and you look at Jacksonville's Jaguars. How many times have they been in the playoffs? Okay. You're going to look at that. And then you look at, hey, the 49ers, a team off of, one season away from being in the Super Bowl. So you got to take all that into consideration, and here it is, in the locker room in Jacksonville, the biggest thing is, man, if we go out there and take care of business against the 49ers, then, we've come of age. So you can't let that happen, It's like when you get them down, you got to keep them down. You can't let them get back up, And I'm like Eric, on the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, He had some great players around him when he was in college, okay? But since he came out of college, you haven't seen his greatness, To me, he's just an average quarterback right now, and the owner overpaid him, and the guy hasn't shown that he's the guy that can take him to the next level. And the 49ers can't let him go to the next level. They got to keep him down.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, Trevor Lawrence today, only 50% completion rating on 40 pass attempts, only 222 passing yards. Not a very good game. No touchdowns, 2 sacks, quarterback rating of just 29.5, or a QBR of only 29.5. A very, very, very subpar day from Trevor Lawrence. But hey, Jacksonville still found a way to win that game. Niners are going to still have to find a way to win against them next week. And hopefully we'll learn more about Brock Purdy and his availability. Maybe he's healthy enough to play next week. He almost supposedly was able to play this week. And who knows if that's just, posturing by Kyle Shanahan to make the other team have to prepare for 2 quarterbacks, or maybe it was actually Brock getting healthier than we expected. Either way, I think that we know Brock is a little bit ahead of schedule on that injury timeline. So hopefully he's able to work his way back and start for the 49ers next week. But even if he's not able to, you got a game-winning drive from Mac Jones today, is the 4th of his career, and another 280 plus passing yards from him. Even though it didn't look pretty at times, he still got it done, man. I still think if you need one more week of Mac Jones, that will be just fine for this 49ers team. I think that you really need Brock back before week 5 against the Rams, when things start to really turn the heat up in the division games and all that. So 49ers today, they win 16-15 over the Arizona Cardinals. A 3-0 start for this team. The vibes feel a lot better than they did last year. That's all the time that we got for you guys here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Big thanks to Eric Crocker and Dwayne Board. As always, I am your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.